Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It is 2 p.m., and I call this special meeting of the Board of Education to order. Before we call the roll, Dr. Wright is excused today due to health-related issues. I'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Clementi?
I am here.
Mr. Farrell?
Here.
Judge Mays?
Here.
Mr. Voss?
Here.
Dr. Wright?
Superintendent Macaluso, do you have any corrections or modifications to the agenda?
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, there are no corrections or modifications to the agenda.
Then I'll move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
I'll call the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi?
Aye.
Mr. Farrell?
Aye.
Judge Mays?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye. And we'll move now to reports. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Robert Lawson, who serves as the Executive Director of Facilities and Maintenance, and he's going to provide a report regarding some recent changes that we've had at the Carlisle School facility. Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Superintendent Macaluso, President Voss, and members of the board. This afternoon, I want to take just a few minutes to update the board on some issues that were recently discovered at Carlisle Elementary School. I'll go ahead and share my screen if this works. Can everyone see that now?
We can see your, hang on, it's doing something now. I think we can see your screen now, Bob.
Is that the Carlisle slide?
It is on the Carlisle slide.
Okay. As you may remember, during the latter part of this past May, Pueblo experienced several thunderstorms that produced very heavy rains. Following those rains, the facilities department received reports of several roof leaks at Carlisle Elementary School. Facility staff reported this past May, Pueblo experienced several thunderstorms that produced very heavy rains. Following those rains, the facilities department received reports of several roof leaks at Carlisle Elementary School. Facility staff responded and found several locations in the school that had experienced severe leaks, far worse than any had been reported before. As our staff began to investigate the leaking roof areas to determine the cause and what repairs would be needed to be made, they found that many areas of the tile roof had become dislodged, and it was due to the fact that nails anchoring these tiles had rusted and corroded away, leaving the tiles unsecured, loose, and shifting. Staff entered the attic area to inspect the underside of the roof deck and found extensive water damage to the roof deck and found extensive water damage to the roof trusses as well. Water damage included boards breaking and splitting from being saturated with water. And as you might be able to see in the slide there, we actually have some mold growing on the underside of that as well. We immediately contacted a local contractor to assess the damage and repairs needed. And when that contractor responded, they reported that the tile roof would need to be replaced along with all of the roof decking. The roof decking is comprised of 1x6 slat type boards, not your typical plywood decking. Due to the year this was built in 1931, it was a different roof deck system. They said that roof trusses may also need to be replaced, but they wouldn't know until they removed all of the decking that would be above that. The estimated repair cost was $750,000 to $800,000, but that doesn't include the cost of any trusses needing replacement, as that would still be unknown. Additional to the roof issues, facilities HVAC and boiler staff started their annual inspections and preventive maintenance on the school's steam heating system during the first week of this past June. Staff reported that they found the piping for the heating system had further degraded and corroded and were concerned about the condition. At that time, they indicated that it had worsened enough that they believed that the system would be unsafe to operate. As the board is aware, staff have been monitoring the HVAC system at the school for the past several years as it was deteriorating and the system was nearing the end of its life. Facility staff contacted a local mechanical contractor to look at the piping and the condition of the system, with the contractor reporting up to the district that they felt that the system had deteriorated to the point of becoming unsafe to operate. We then contacted a mechanical engineer to inspect and assess the HVAC system in the school to determine if it was safe and whether any immediate repairs were needed. The engineer responded and completed a thorough inspection of the entire heating system that included all areas of the steam pipe, valves, steam traps, and boilers. The engineer reported their assessment to the district on July 6, 2021. The engineering firm noted their findings in the executive summary of the report and provided the district with an assessment of the condition of the steam heating system as well as their recommendations. In the first section of the report summary, the engineer noted the following. The existing steam distribution system is in complete failure mode and is at the end of its useful life. It poses a significant threat to students, teachers, and maintenance staff. It is recommended that the existing steam heating, piping, furnaces, steam coils, and all associated components be demolished in their entirety and replaced with a new heating system. As described in the report below, all of the piping components are in imminent risk of failure. Neglecting to replace the piping system will likely result in a catastrophic failure, causing physical harm and/or loss of heat. We again spoke with a mechanical system contractor along with a local architectural firm to identify a scope of work that the engineer's assessment report identified. Both indicated that extensive asbestos abatement and demolition of the interior of the school would be needed to completely replace the system as indicated. As this level of work would result in modifications to the majority of the school, the building would then be required to be fully renovated to meet all building and occupancy code requirements, including fire, sprinklers, ADA accessibility compliance, and all other code requirements, as the building would no longer meet any existing exemptions from those codes. To conclude my report, what we do know so far is the estimate for the HVAC replacement and full renovation for the building was estimated to be $15 to $18 million, with the possibility of being higher if more issues were discovered with the repairs and renovations. We also know that the building will need to be closed for an extended period to allow for any repairs to be completed. With this information in mind, the Facilities Department is recommending the emergency closure of Carlisle Elementary School based upon the engineer's assessment and the safety concerns. And with that, I'll now turn this back over to Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Mr. Voss, I'm not sure if you want, we're certainly, my staff is open to questions from board members.
Sure. Judge Mays, do you have any questions or comments?
Mr. Lawson, you mentioned that the $15 to $18 million is an estimate without knowing, going into the building and finding other things. What can you give us any kind of a top end estimate that you think this might have in terms of money necessary to bring this school up to code?
Actually, we know as part of the facility assessment that was done, there are concerns with the foundation system at the school, as well as some plumbing issues and and other things that are have been identified in the building. With renovation, those could trigger code compliance and occupancy requirements to those be upgraded and repaired. Worst case scenario, I guess, we could be looking upwards of $24 to $25 million.
And Mr. Lawson, to go back to the initial part of your presentation, and you talked about the roofing concerns. Again, you indicated that that was really an unknown at this time because of a necessary inspection, further inspection to determine the need. Can you give us a top-end estimate on the roof part of it? And I'm assuming it's separate and apart from what we're talking about here.
Yes.
Okay, can you give us an idea of what that is?
Worst case scenario, if we had to replace all of those trusses, and those are basically built on site trusses, those aren't anything pre-manufactured. We could that roofing project could easily run in excess of $1.5 million.
So are we talking about, and I understand these are just estimates at the time, are we adding $1.5 million on to 25 million as a possible cost to do what's necessary to bring this school up to par?
It could be, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lawson. I have no other questions.
Mr. Farrell, any questions or comments?
I think just one is Mr. Lawson, thank you for your update. Is the boiler system currently shut off? Is there any current risk to anything with the condition it's in now, or is the concern with restarting it?
The condition is with restarting. The system as it is down and drained now, so we don't have any risk whatsoever right now.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
And Ms. Clementi.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Mr. Lawson. It's my understanding that this meeting and this action for today is simply an emergency closure, and we will be continuing to study and gathering information, and a decision will be made at a later date about the use of the building and its efficacy. Is that accurate, Mrs. Macaluso? Today we're just dealing with.
That is correct.
What's right in front of us.
The action item for today would be school boundaries, closure, and a leadership appointment are the only actions today. There will be no action in regard to decisions that the board may make in regard to repairs or use or thereafter.
So that we could continue to gather information before any decision is made about the future of that beautiful building.
That is correct.
As Mr. Lawson, as you were presenting your report, I kept thinking, well, golly, 60 years ago that steam heat was really nice. It's it's too bad we can't maintain it. That's my only question. I appreciate the information, and I know this emergency closure will create a lot of changes for us. And Mrs. Macaluso, you'll bring us up to date on those a little later.
That will be encompassed in the following report.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawson, I know we're going to be building a few new elementary schools. Can you give us the cost of a brand new state-of-the-art building, what that costs today?
Yes, we have examples with our Sunset Park and Franklin schools. Those are 450 occupancy buildings. Obviously, new 21st century design. With the demolition of the existing school and the construction of the new school, we're at about $24 million.
Thank you for that, Mr. Lawson. I think my other questions have to do with the next report. So are there any other further questions from the board?
Yeah, maybe I'll I'll ask this now. It may be encompassed in the following report, but do we have the numbers for the populations of all of the elementary schools in the city? And Mr. Lawson mentioned 450. Does that seem to be the average for these? And how many students do we presently have at Carlisle?
We will have those numbers for Carlisle in the next report. And I don't currently have all the numbers for the elementary schools in front of me, but I can certainly provide that to the board.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lawson, for your presentation. I think we'll go ahead and move to the next report. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. So in the event that we would need to go forth with an emergency closure of Carlisle, I have asked my team to work on what would be an efficient and effective transition plan, including looking at boundaries and what would the enrollment be and staff considerations. And so at this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Andy Burns, who serves as Executive Director of Student Support Services. And in addition, Eric DeCesaro will join him in the presentation. Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Superintendent Macaluso, and good afternoon, President Voss and members of the board. I'm going to share my screen here, so bear with me for a second. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you. Based upon the findings identified in Mr. Lawson's report, D60 leadership has identified Columbian Elementary School as a suitable site for Carlisle students. My report will focus on the student services related matters associated with today's recommendation. The first topic that I'd like to share relates to the proposed school boundary changes, as well as the school enrollment options for our students. If today's recommendation is approved, the existing Carlisle boundaries would be incorporated into the existing Columbian boundaries. Carlisle students would be offered an enrollment seat at Columbian Elementary School. No action is required for students that choose this option, and transportation per board policy would be provided for eligible students residing in the current Carlisle boundary who live more than 1 mile away from Columbian. Our goal is to make this as seamless as a process for our students and families. For families who want to consider an alternative to Columbian, they can complete the school choice process, and families may submit an application for that as early as 6 p.m. today. Our existing school choice determination categories include a school closure category, and that category would be taken into consideration for families and students going through the school choice process. The second topic that I would like to cover are the current enrollment numbers at both schools and building capacity at Columbian. Current enrollment for Carlisle is 189 students at the K-5 level, and Columbian's current K-5 enrollment is 247 students. Columbian Elementary School has the building capacity to educate 491 students. As you look at both the individual and combined enrollment figures, we will be able to safely and appropriately accommodate both Carlisle and Columbian students into the Columbian facility. Those combined figures total 436 K-5 students. The charts show those enrollments by each grade level, with Carlisle in that first column, Columbian, and then the combined totals showing 436 students, K-5. This slide provides the enrollment boundary descriptions. If today's recommendation is approved, both the descriptions and boundary maps will be updated on the D60 website as early as this afternoon. And as I had mentioned earlier, families would be able, as early as 6 p.m., to go through the school choice process. Again, if families decide to stay within the Carlisle, now Columbian boundaries and school, they do not need to take any action. It will be a very seamless process for them. This concludes my report to the Board of Education, and I would now like to introduce Assistant Superintendent DeCesaro for his report.
Good afternoon, Superintendent Macaluso, President Voss, and members of the board. In the event that we move forward with an emergency closure, we will implement a process to support our staff in their transition to their new positions. We want to be very thoughtful and give everyone the opportunity to find a safe place to land. This will be stressful enough, so we want to reduce the stress and anxiety as much as possible. In the event that we move forward, we will appoint the current principal of Carlisle, Mr. Jimmy Poole, to the principal of Columbian Elementary. He is a great leader with experience that will provide new leadership to the Columbian community, as well as the relationships he will take with him from Carlisle, and be a familiar face to our families moving to their new school. We will meet with staff immediately, early next week, to address their concerns and questions. We will also survey the staff to see if they are interested in moving to Columbian or if they are interested in another vacancy within the district. We will identify the positions at Columbian that we will have available. We will also identify the other positions in the district that will be options for staff. A new staffing plan will be created to accommodate the additional students and staff at Columbian. Staff placements will be based on needs, and our department will be ready and responsive to the needs of our staff to make this transition as smooth as possible. One additional detail is that our Exceptional Student Services Department has been working on a plan to transition the autism programs from Carlisle to Bessemer Elementary for next year. We'll be working with the ESS department and the buildings to make this transition as smooth as possible for both students and staff. Are there any questions?
Mr. DeSestro, sorry, Judge Mays, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Voss. I'll follow up.
I was just going to ask, as far as the students moving to Columbian, can you talk about why the autism program would be at Bessemer rather than Columbian?
I believe, and I believe Dr. Yusevich is on the line as well, and she may have some further details. It was kind of, as we've known for a long time, this was a potential possibility moving forward, that it was that this could happen at any time, at Carlisle. So they have been kind of thinking that in the back of their the process of what that could look like, where would be a suitable place for that. The space is sufficient. I know they have a room that would be conducive to that type of program with the space for the additional resources it requires. And I think that was really the catalyst for the choice of Bessemer. But if Dr. Yusevich has more to add, she could chime in on that.
Yes,
sure.
Thank you very much for that opportunity. We looked very carefully at the center-based programs and realized that we could not overload Columbian with 3 center-based programs, that we would have to utilize our space more effectively. Bessemer does have room for it, and the decision was, rather than place 3 center-based programs in one school as a burden, we would deploy the autism program to Bessemer to make the transition to Columbian for the general population better, and to make sure that our Bessemer students have our students going to Bessemer from the autism program have all the equipment, the teachers, and the support they need in a very efficient and calm, quiet mood.
Great, thank you for that. Sorry, Judge Mays, go ahead.
That was my question, Mr. Voss. Thank you.
Mr. Farrell, any questions for you?
Is that the end of the report, or is there more? I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
This concludes the report.
Okay, thank you. I had a little bit of a question for Mr. Burns and your discussion about the choice process. I'm assuming that should the board make a decision today that communication to families would be prompt, and that communication would include information about how to participate in the choice process if they choose.
Mr. Burns, you're muted, but that is in fact correct. We will deploy communication as early as this afternoon to families. We will contact both Columbian families and Carlisle families, and in the communication to Carlisle families, we will in fact tell them how to access the choice window and so forth.
And to follow up a little bit about that, can you remind me are we currently within the normal choice window, or is the normal choice period already ended for the year? Would this
the choice window has ended, but we will be opening up a special window specifically for the Carlisle families.
And it'll be clear about what that window is as far as
Yes.
when they need to request that by. Okay. And then, Mr. DeCestro, your discussion about staffing and reassigning, that's not exclusive to teachers. You're talking about custodians, secretarial staff, everyone in the building currently, correct?
Yes, correct. And of course, with 2 buildings going to 1, there will be some places, of course, where we won't be able to have duplicates of certain things, and we'll have to work with staff and find them a safe home with some of the vacancies that we have. And we do have some vacancies that are available, and we'll try to do that with soft gloves and make sure everybody feels safe and has a good place. Everybody's job is secure. I want to make sure everybody understands that. They'll be in the current position that they're in. It will just be a different location, perhaps different specific role, but you know, if you're a teacher, you're a teacher. If you're a custodian, you're a custodian, and that will continue.
Thank you. That answered my next question too. And vacancy wise, I mean, you feel comfortable that there's positions out there that are still available that will be made available to these people at Carlisle?
Absolutely. They will have several choices to choose from if they don't fit into the Columbian model.
Thank you.
Mr.
Ms.
Burns,
Clement.
if I could just ask you to stop sharing just so that we have a clearer view of the speakers. Thank you.
Ms. Clementi, any questions for you?
Thank you. I believe I understand that there is room at Columbian for any and all students and families who would like to move there. And then they also have the option then to choice into another school if they choose. Correct? The staffing will, as always, need to follow the students as much as is needed. And that's accurate as well, correct? My only question is this. I think I understood Mrs. Gusevich to say, or Dr. Gusevich to say, that there are already 2 center-based programs at Columbian, and they will stay there. So there is room at Columbian for the programs that are there, plus the additional students who choose to go there from Carlisle. Is that, am I on the right track there?
That is correct. No existing
Great.
program at Columbian will be displaced as a result.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate all the thought that's gone into this at this point.
And I think all of my questions have been answered. So thank you all for the presentation. We really appreciate it.
I have another one, President.
Oh,
Wilson.
sure. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Ms. Clementi just reminded me of it. As far as the program, the autism program moving from Carlisle, is that program really integrated into the culture? Is there going to be a huge, or is it kind of I don't want to say isolated, but is it, how hard is it going to be to split that program from an environment that they're used to, the students that they're used to, staff? I'm assuming staff would follow the program, but if you understand what I'm getting at.
That is correct, and I'll have Dr. Gusevich speak to that.
Thank you. Yes, the autism program that we are speaking of is a self-contained program. Those students spend all day in the classroom with those teachers. So they will be able to transition over to Bessemer with their staff, all of their equipment, and all of their needs without it impacting anything other than the fact that they'll be in a new room. Notice that the other thing of note is that Bessemer has the handicap playground equipment, and this autism program can make great use of that playground equipment that we installed 3 years ago.
Great. Thank you for that answer.
Are there any other questions from the board? Okay. Well, thank you all for your presentation. We'll move now to 11.0, the consent agenda. Are there any items anyone would like to be removed to be voted on separately?
President Voss, I don't have anything that I want removed, but I do have a question. Should I ask it now or?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be okay.
Okay. I noticed that there is an item on here, and it is number 6 concerning Sunset. And this question would be for Mr. Lawson, and it's the water main relocation. And my question is this, Mr. Lawson, since we know that Sunset's going to be receiving a new school, will this money be well spent on that? Is that something we're going to have to do anyway, and it will fit right in with the construction of the new Sunset?
What that water main is actually a transfer main. It's a 30-inch main. It doesn't supply water to the school, but it bisects the school property where the new school would set. And so we have to relocate it. And so they're going to take that water line and go around University Circle and remove it from not only our property, but the park property just north of that school, and put it out in the street where sewer or water lines are typically located. And so, yes, it's not additional money. It's included in the project in the sense that our contingency, we do have to use some additional funds for that. But the City of Pueblo, the Pueblo Water Board, is also contributing to the project, kind of that good partnership relationship to help us out. Because they know it, essentially it should also be out in the street and not bisecting properties.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson.
Okay, I will move then that we approve consent agenda items 2 through 11 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi,
Aye.
Mr. Farrell,
Aye.
Judge Mays,
Aye.
Mr. Voss,
Aye. We'll move now to 12.0 action items. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss, members of the board. Today you have heard an extensive report regarding the facility conditions of Carlisle, to include the fact that the steam HVAC system is at end of life. In addition, you have heard plans to move forward with transition in the event that Carlisle emergency closure should be necessary. We have been at these crossroads before, and I want to take a minute to acknowledge the Carlisle team. The last time I met with the Carlisle staff, I walked away from that meeting with a very full heart. I turned to Mr. DeCicero, who was with me at that meeting, and I said, if we could only capture the energy, the love, and the positive culture of Carlisle and document it in some way, we could use it as a guide so that we could train others in regard to, this is what a positive school culture looks like and feels like and sounds like. Carlisle School is comprised of dedicated staff members who work tirelessly toward the success of the scholars and families they serve. I am confident that that staff will continue to support our families in this transition. In addition, the Thunderbolt family at Columbian is just that. It is a family who prides themselves in maintaining an environment that is nurturing and welcoming and goes above and beyond to meet the needs of each scholar and sets high expectations for teaching and learning. I appreciate the fact that in this potential transition plan, it includes the ability for the existing Carlisle principal to serve as the principal at the receiving school, and that several Carlisle teachers will have the opportunity to follow students to their next place of promise. So at this time, President Voss, Board of Education members, I would ask for your support as I recommend the emergency closure of Carlisle Elementary School and the relocation of any programs being conducted at the school.
Thank you, Superintendent Macaluso. With that, I will move that the Board of Education accept the superintendent's recommendation concerning Carlisle Elementary School and take action for school closure and program relocation as presented in today's board materials.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I'll call the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi,
Aye.
Mr. Farrell,
Aye.
Judge Mays,
Aye.
Mr. Voss.
Aye. We'll move now to our second action item, Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. The next action item would be to ask the board to consider approval regarding the school boundaries as presented in board materials.
And I will move that the Board of Education accept and take action to approve the proposed new boundaries for schools as presented in today's board materials.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi,
Aye.
Mr. Farrell,
Aye.
Judge Mays,
Aye.
Mr. Voss.
Aye. And we'll move now to our third action item.
Thank you, President Voss. And this is to request a leadership appointment, and that would be for Jimmy Poole, current principal, Carlisle Elementary School, to serve as principal, Columbian Elementary School, effective August 2nd, 2021.
I will move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent's recommendation for administrative appointment as presented in today's board materials.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi,
Aye.
Mr. Farrell,
Aye.
Judge Mays,
Aye.
Mr. Voss.
Aye. Is there any other further business from the board?
I would just like to acknowledge that that I think we as a board recognize the difficulty of this kind of an emergency closure, and that it is not taken lightly. We have a beautiful building there on Pitkin, and we need to ensure the safety of our students and staff, which we can't do anymore, unfortunately. I think we all know that this means a lot of changes for many people, and we certainly hope that that those can be accomplished with as much ease as possible. I know that Superintendent Macaluso and Dr. Gusevich and Mr. DeCicero and Mr. Burns have all laid out or begun work anyway at processes to make things as user-friendly and as positive as possible, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Clementi. Is there anything else from the board? Okay, then at 2:39 p.m., we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.